Welcome to Your Hero Academia by Fangirl48 on AO3. Chapter 6. The results are in. All the stupid. Izuku sat up, grateful, taking some of the candy Recovery Girl passed him. Reckless things you could have done. Izuku hummed in appreciation at the cherry flavor. Are you stupid? Do you have a dash wish? Now, Aizawa. Toshinori smiled at the underground hero. It wasn't that he disagreed with what the man was saying, but Izuku had just gained pre-consciousness. He was probably only half listening to the lecture. Blue eyes turned and fixed on Izuku, showing great concern. I'm sure Izuku here had a plan. Right, Izuku? The boy said suddenly, the subject of 3 very intense glares. I had about 1/8 of a plan. Aizawa looked ready to explode. Why would you attempt to take the 0-pointer on if you didn't think you could beat it? Recovery Girl asked. She couldn't help but wonder if this sort of behavior was an inherited trait from the first Shigaraki, one that carried over to every person to receive one for all. Toshinori certainly acted this way when he was in school. Nana also. I don't know. Why does the school have a giant robot that can crush people to death? Izuku snapped back. Realizing his tone a second later, the boy looked down, feeling ashamed. Sorry, Ochako's really nice, and she could have gotten hurt, and she was trapped underneath debris. One wrong move, and I just kind of moved before realizing it. There was a collective sigh from the group. Sometimes it was hard for them to remember that Izuku had come from a world where fighting for your life was a normal everyday thing. Aizawa, as an underground hero, is especially sympathetic. As someone who worked hundreds of some of the worst cases imaginable, he knew how hard it was to let go of that mindset, where 1 second of hesitation could lead to someone dying. Many of the incoming students were so blinded by money and fame they could receive as heroes that they forget this. Heroes must always be willing to sacrifice themselves for people. That was what the HPSC preached. However, finding true heroes that were willing to do that was far and few between. It is why Nezu always released the 0-pointer during the test. The principal always felt like it was an excellent way to see which students this statement talked about. It had been a long time since someone tried to take down the 0-pointer on. Even longer since it had been done to help another examinee. Aizawa sighed, and leaned down, grabbing Izuku's head and forcing him to meet his eye. Listen here, problem child. Problem child? Izuku flared around. I'm older than you. Zip it. The dark-haired stared, floating, causing Izuku to squeal and sit up a little straighter. Next training session, we will be going over everything you did wrong during the exam, starting from your behavior with Mike to passing out. Am I understood? Izuku sat there feeling very afraid for his next training session. He opened and closed his mouth a few times before surrendering and nodding. Toshinori and Recovery Girl just sighed in acceptance. All right then. Aizawa nodded, standing up and turning around to walk away, glancing back to Izuku one last time. And next time you want to do something so stupid like that, have a plan ready so that you don't have to be the one in need of rescuing. The Duraka won't always be around to save you. Izuku brightened up instantly. Wait, does that mean? She's got a good shot, judging from what I saw of her points. Aizawa gave a thumbs up, before walking away. Katsuki slammed the door to the classroom shut. Another lunch wasted, hunting for that freckled-faced loser. Sitting down and leaning back, the explosion user thought about it. Katsuki was positive that Nerd's exam card had the same name as his shitty school, but all attempts to locate said Nerd had come empty. Nobody in the shitty place aside from Katsuki had even taken the U8 General's exam, much less the hero course. They all knew what Katsuki would have done to them if they dared try. The few students who had been absent recently looked nothing like that mysterious student, and the teachers had never heard of an Izuku Midoriya before. It was possible that that weakling might have been a UA plant, but Katsuki seriously doubted that the school would need to do such a thing, which left only one possibility. Izuku Midoriya must be a villain, or a spy, at the very least. One that nobody knew about. Yet. A victorious smile came to the blonde's face as he took out his notebook, opening it to the new page. But instead of writing down his teacher's lectures on the mathematics, Katsuki started writing down everything he could remember about the weakling. His teachers had always told Katsuki that he was brilliant, that with his quirk, he would be a top hero in no time. It wasn't hard to see that they were trying to manipulate the explosive user, brag about how they were the ones who always believed in the future #1. Or maybe use his lessons to all the weaker losers at Aldera to try and get something from Katsuki later. If Katsuki played his cards right and exposed Izuku Midoriya, or whatever his name was on the UA staff, that would no doubt come to realize just how great Katsuki was as well. The other pebbles that made up his future class would return to their proper places as stepping stones for Katsuki's rise to greatness. They could brag later how remarkable Katsuki was when they were struggling D-list sidekicks. Maybe, if Katsuki played his cards right, UA might even let him skip a grade, or graduate early if he exposes Izuku Midoriya. Katsuki was going to be bigger and richer than even All Might himself. All it had started here. The students surrounding Bakugo shivered, leaning away from the explosive blonde. Hitoshi sat in the bedroom cuddling the worn-out cat plushie that had been with him since before he entered foster care. It wasn't fair. He had been so close to getting into the hero's course. Just a few more points, and Hitoshi could have proven everyone wrong about his quirk. Why? Why did some people get blessed with hero quirks? Well, Hitoshi was stuck as a villain. There was a knock on the door. Looking up, Hitoshi saw his grandmother staring back at him. Well? Hitoshi looked away, ashamed. He had really wanted to do her proud. His grandparents were the first people since the car crash that believed in him. A wrinkled hand placed itself on Hitoshi's shoulders, pulling him into a tight hug. Don't worry. You got into generics, right? It's only a matter of time before you're kicking ass and arresting people. It's not fair, Hitoshi said, leaning into the hug. I worked so hard. I know, kitten. His grandmother spoke, kissing the top of Hitoshi's head. Goodness, you remind me so much of Eric sometimes. He was always trying to get things done as fast as possible that he forgot sometimes it's better to go slow. Eric had been Hitoshi's grandfather. The man had passed away a few years ago. Eric had once been a certified villain who went by Cobra and ran with a fairly numerous gang. When they had finally been caught, the media had been tipped off that the gang members had all been raising as child soldiers. In a surprising twist, the public demanded that they be reformed rather than punished. His grandmother, Kirakan, despite her transformation quirk, had been deemed a failure and thrown aside. Hitoshi wasn't sure how his grandfather found his grandmother years later, especially since she had lost her memories. All he knew was that the two loved each other more than anyone else Hitoshi had seen. Well, something else came for you as well, she said, pulling out a small letter and passing it to Hitoshi. Opening it up, a small booklet lay inside. Pulling it out, the pair started reading through. The contents were about UA's sports festival. If a student did well enough, they would be given a chance to transfer in the heroics course. A small piece of paper fluttered out when Hitoshi flipped The page. On it was a single line and drawn in a small black cat, sleeping music notes surrounding them. You have good instincts, and you remind me of another hero I know, so don't stress out too much. And try to build up your physical strength, though, till the right time comes. Hitoshi felt a warm sensation in his chest. One of the UA teachers had sent him a note encouraging him. Someone besides his family saw his potential. All he needed to do was get stronger, and then Hitoshi would be one step closer to his dream. Waiting, Tensei found, was always the hardest part. Glancing over, Tensei saw Tenya, sitting on the floor, stiff as a board. The brothers had been waiting for the mailman to arrive all day. So, I heard a funny joke today. You want to hear it? The younger Ida said nothing. He just continued to stare at the door. A moment later, as if on cue, there was a sound of something being dropped into the mailbox. Sensei had never seen Tenya move so quickly in training as he dove towards the metal box. A second later, a hollow disco fell into the floor, lighting up as All Might appeared on it. Booyah! I am here as a projection! Sensei turned his head to stop himself from laughing. He truly respected the number one, but Takai was so over the top sometimes. Tenya Ida, you passed the written exam in the top 10. You must have worked hard to achieve your score. Sensei glanced over, noticing that his little brother was practically vibrating with joy from the praise. I know that you took both the recommendation and open exams. I'm sorry you had to wait so long, but you passed the exam with your score on the practical. Congratulations on your results, and welcome to UA's Hero Course. The hologram turned itself off a moment later, leaving both brothers staring. Before Tenya could say anything, Sensei leaned over and pulled his little brother into a hug. You did it, Tenya! Congrats! Sensei knew that Tenya had worked hard for this. Failing the recommendation exam had really bummed out his little brother. The hero wanted to say something, but was waiting to see the results of his open exam first. Tenya was a good kid with a big heart. He looked up to his older brother and parents so much, always saying how much he wanted to be a hero just like they were. I'm pretty sure that day would come. Sensei couldn't wait to see the day Ingenium and Tenya worked together to make the city a better place. Ochako looked through the latest apartment rental listings. Her job delivering papers didn't pay much, but she had been saving. If she could just pay a few months' rent, then everything should be okay, and maybe if the gravity user was lucky, she could find a part-time job in Mutsufa, nothing too time-consuming so she could keep up with her studies. Maybe tutoring was something to look into? Opening in door, Ochako kicked off her shoes. I'm home. Mom? Dad? In here, sweetie. Her mother's voice rang out from the kitchen. Heading further into the apartment, Ochako found her parents at the table looking at something, serious looks on their face. Mom? Dad, what's wrong? The brunette asked, looking forward. Uraraka's mom smacked her husband's arm. It's nothing, sweetie. Actually, we've got some good news for you. Good news? Ochako's father pouted, crossing his arms like a child. My sweet little girl is going to be surrounded by vicious beasts, and you call that good news? Oh, hush, dear, the older brunette hissed, turning back before smiling at her daughter. This came in the mail today. The Uraraka matriarchally slid something over as Ochako sat down. Opening it up, she was surprised to see that the book contained information about UA's new dormitories. Dormitories that were rent-free for all UA students currently enrolled. Flipping through the book to the layout of the rooms and common areas, it was clear to see that the school had not skipped on the price. The principal made sure everything the students could possibly need was included in the design. We'd obviously send you the money for food and necessities, but what do you think? Mrs. Uraraka asked, taking Ochako's hand. Next weekend there's an open house for new students to see the dorms, but next week. Oh, that explains her parents' faces when she walked in. Next week, both her parents were going to be working on a site. There was no way either of them could have time to take Ochako to see the dorms. That's all right. Ochako smiled, a plan already forming. I'll still get to see the dorms on move-in day. Honey, I'm gonna go get changed and start on my homework. The gravity user stood up quickly. Let me know when dinner's ready, okay? Hastily rushing to her room, Ochako closed the door, slumping to the ground. She let out a deep sigh before she got a determined look on her face. The paper didn't explicitly say that a parent or chaperone was needed. As long as she planned everything right, Ochako could dip into some of her savings to spend the night in a hotel before coming back home the next day. Fujimi crinkled the papers in her hand as she walked down the hall. Every step felt like a new weight was added, but the woman knew she had to do this. When the information regarding the dorms was sent to her and not her father, Fujimi was confused. Liar, you know precisely why it was sent to you. Shoto, sitting on the vacant as he applied bandages to his fresh bruises. Fujimi was watching from behind a corner at a first aid kit in hand. Reaching her youngest brother's room, Fujimi stood there timidly, wishing Natsuo was here with her. The college student would have no problems talking to Shoto about this. In fact, Natsuo would encourage Shoto to leave just like he had. Pushing a stray tear away, Fujimi wished that her mom or Toya were still here. Reaching up, the woman readied herself to knock on the door. Fujimi. Shoto's voice rang out from behind her, startling the teacher. Turning around, she saw Shoto standing there, a fresh bandage on his cheek. What are you doing here? Do you know where Dad is? Fujimi asked, afraid that their father was going to jump out any second. Shoto shrugged. Endeavor's got a call and had to deal with something. Oh, good. Fujimi sighed in relief, holding the envelope tighter to her chest. Can we talk? Shoto shrugged again and reached over, opening the door for his sister. Fujimi nervously made her way inside. Seeing that the room was just as bare as it always was, a bed, desk, and wardrobe were all that laid inside. No photos, posters, or trinkets gathered around. Shoto's room was more like a prison cell than a teenager's bedroom. Shoto, are you happy? Fujimi blurted out, suddenly gasping and covering her mouth a second later. That came out wrong. I'm not unhappy. The red and white-haired boy shrugged again, taking the towel he had been wearing and wiping his forehead. I have a roof over my head and food to eat. What more should I want? Everything. You should be happy. You should have friends and smile. Why did you stop smiling, Shoto? Do you want to leave? Fujimi asked, taking his brother's face to her hands. If you could leave, would you? Endeavor wouldn't. Would you leave? Shoto looked away, unable to meet Fujimi's eyes, whispering, Yes. It hurt for Fujimi to hear. Somewhere, deep inside, she childishly wanted that Shoto didn't want to leave, that he would stay and help her make them a family again. Instead, she pulled her youngest brother into a tight embrace. Next weekend, you and I are going on a trip. But don't argue with me, Shoto. Fujimi spoke softly. Just trust me, okay? Seconds later, arms timidly wrapped around themselves and Fujimi, returning the hug. Don't! Izuku yelled at Toshinori, pushing the man away. Izuku. No! This is my life! The boy yelled, pointing at the innocent-looking phone. You still don't believe I'm me, and you're upset that I would want to be your hero, when you, of all people, should know better than anyone else why I want to be. The other person on the end was silent. And you. Izuku turned to point at Toshinori. Don't be nice to me when you're just gonna leave me behind too. Izuku yelled, walking over to the desk, pulling out all the apartment listings, throwing them on the table. If you didn't want to live with me, all you had to do was say something. Toshinori opened his mouth. He knew he should have talked to Izuku about this when he started looking for new apartments. But number one had always wanted to surprise him badly. Well, guess what? I'm leaving instead. I'll live in one of those completed dorm rooms, or Nezu's. As for you, Hisashi, call me when you pull your head out of your ass, or don't call me at all. Grabbing his jacket, Izuku stormed out, slamming the door before Toshinori could stop him. Sighing, the number one hero sat down, looking at the papers. It is really him, isn't it? A small voice asked over the speaker. This isn't a trick, is it, All Might? Or a ploy? That's really my Izuku. He's finally come back to me? Yes, all for one. The hero nodded. How? Toshinori opened his mouth. Okay, we'll unpack those can of worms when we will, okay? For now, we're sticking to my list. So Aizawa in the beginning, where Izuku's like, hold up, problem child, I'm older than you. And Aizawa's like, shut it, you're gonna listen to me? And that really proved, like, Izuku's like, I'm not older, am I? Like, mentally, I'm not older. Physically, I'm not older. I mean, is he really older? That's my whole thought process. Mentally, he's not older. He's still 15, right? He still lived 15 years. Those 200 years, he wasn't, like, conscious. He was still frozen, right? Like, it wasn't like he was sitting there and living those 200 years in his head. No, he's mentally 15. Body-wise, he's 15. He is 15. Just in length of time that he has lived, he's 215. But otherwise, in every other aspect, like mentally and physically, he's 15, so he might as well just be freaking a 15-year-old, right? You know? If we were talking about, like, some other aspect where mentally he wasn't 15, but physically he was 16, like, for example, with vampires, and that would be a different story. Or, like, mentally he's still 15, but physically he's, like, older, like those stories where, like, somebody is put into a coma when they're little, like, let's say 15, and they wake up, like, 15 or 30 years later, and, like, technically speaking, their body is older, but their mind is still of a 15-year-old. Mentally wise, like, mental wise, like, technically speaking, I think their mind would still be developed. I don't know how that changes the developmental, formatting of the brain, if the brain still, upgrades the neurons. It upgrades as in it puts that white stuff over the neurons. Whatever. Point taken as people who study psychology. Can you ask your professors or your teachers about that? That's a very interesting question I have. I'm gonna research that. That's actually very interesting. Whatever. Point taken is. But yeah, technically speaking, what do you guys think? Do you think you consider Izuku 15 or 215? Because, like, I mean, as I said, mentally speaking, he's still 15, and physically speaking, he's still 15. The only thing that makes him 215 is how long he's been in this earth, right? You know, and technically speaking, for 200 of those 215 years he's been on Earth, he wasn't conscious. So does that really count? Like, kind of thing. It's just, you know, a thought of mine that I would be interested to have you guys answer in the comments. Katsuki's point of view. Oh my god. Katsuki, look, Bakugo, you have an ego. That's all I'm gonna say. That just proved. Although I will say, this point of view and how they narrate Bakugo shows me a lot on how they characterize Bakugo, right? Because they characterize a lot of characters. See, My Hero Academia is wonderful, obviously, and I love all the fanfics, but each fanfic characterizes the characters just a tad bit different from each different one. And Bakugo's one that I see that gets characterized completely different most of the time, right? Not necessarily saying that it's out of canon Bakugo, I just mean they have a different way of interpreting him, right? Izuku is a pretty not straightforward character, but I see more of like, okay, everybody interprets him kind of similarly with a couple stuff out of the line. Bakugo, it's either this, it's either that, it's either this. It's like so many things are interpreted about him, and I honestly think it's super interesting to see the different ways people interpret him, because it's an interesting thing, you know. Like, for example, Deku, I think he's a pro by Clouds, Man in the Clouds Not Coming Down, interprets him in a different way than someone like, for example, the way you used to do by Itara. You know, they interpret them a different way. You know, it's all about interpretation, and this, you know, Bakugo point of view really shows you that interpretation that Bakugo has, more of a egotistical, I deserve the best because I am the best, you know, and I deserve the world kind of mindset, where someone like Deku, I think it's a pro by Clouds, My Head in the Clouds, and you know, the way you used to do by Irara, right? Like, both of them interpret Bakugo as a more of a, I'm egotistical, but I'm also super, like, that egotistic is super superficial, because although I say I am the best, mentally speaking, I don't feel like I'm the best. If I'm grouped up with Izuku, I feel as though I am worse than and less than, and it's a whole complicated array of emotions. I really do love how both of them interpret Bakugo as a character. So this chapter was actually, that point of view specifically, part of that chapter was really interesting to see how the author interprets its Bakugo, and I could actually predict how he's pretty much going to behave throughout the future, and I wonder if they're going to give him a redemption arc or not. Up to them, totally, you know. Hitoshi's point of view, all I'm going to say is sad. That point of view made me cry. There was multiple points in this where I was like tearing up, and then obviously the last point of view, Izuku's point of view, was the one that actually made me cry. But that one made me tear up, because that whole, like, why it's unfair, like, that narration really hit hard. I really liked the way that narration went, the whole aspect of, like, feeling as though it's unfair, you know, the whole why did some people get blessed with hero quirks while he was stuck with a villain one, the whole feeling it wasn't fair, you know, kind of aspect. It really made me cry. Oh my god, the Ida point of view, the Ida brothers point of view, that last line, the Sensei couldn't wait to see the day Indenium and Tenya worked together to make the city a better place. Knowing what I know what happens in season 2, the whole incident with Stain, that is making me upset, and I wonder if this fanfic is going to follow that line as well, like if Sensei will also, you know, that happened to him, and that made me, like, a tear kind of went down. But then we have Uraraka's, and can I just say, Uraraka normally isn't touched upon a lot as a character, which, as I said, I love her so much. I mean, like, I would love to see a whole episode about her. Like, for example, this POV. I want more of that. I want more of seeing how she makes sacrifices for her parents, and how that is the way that shaped her to be the person she is now, because it makes sense. For someone who grew up poor and is, like, in the mindset of, let me help my parents. Let me make sure that my parents aren't the ones that are bearing all this suffering, right? It makes sense why she would then become a hero, one, for the money for her parents, but then she would also see how heroes are suffering and no one's helping them, and reminded of how her parents used to suffer. And being like, okay, well, who's there for them? I'll be there for them. She has this very compassionate kind of soul, this very, I will help you because nobody's helping you, because I know what it's like to not be helped, because I see it with my parents every single day, and I don't want that for anybody. It's that type of empath, that type of emotional bond that she forms with people, where it's like she wants to help people genuinely for her heart, no second motive, no, oh, if I help you then you'll get to help me later on, you'll pass me down a favor. She genuinely does it because she genuinely feels that these people need helping. And sure, she is a hero and helps people via, you know, being heroes to get money to help her parents, right? It's not so that she could get more money so that she's rich and famous. No, it's so that she could get money to give to her parents, to support her parents, because, you know, it's noble, it's amazing, and it enters that whole gray area. Like, for example, Stain. I really wish I knew what his reaction would be to be like, hey, I'm a hero to make parents, hold up, to make money for my parents. What would he react? What would he do? What is the aspect of that? Like, what would he do? And I'm genuinely, like, if any of you guys know a fanfic that's out there that has that or anything like that, please tell me. And hell, I might write that. Because, like, I'm genuinely, like, Stain's ideology is good, right? But here's the thing. It's all about perspective. It's morale, and morals is, it's hard to judge because everybody's morals are different. Like, if he's going on basic ethics, then yeah, you could categorize pretty much anything because ethics is more of a set of rules. Morals is more of one's own personal belief, and it actually switches and changes all the time. And, you know, most people can agree that, morally speaking, killing a child is wrong, but then, you know, you enter the gray area if it's like, okay, well, that child grows up to be, you know, said bad person that, you know, ends up killing a bunch of other people. Like, then comes the whole, well, now is it good? And that's when the gray areas come up. And I would have loved if My Hero Academia, like, treaded that with Uraraka specifically wanting to be a hero for the money for her parents. Because it's all about context. Because if you hear it just out of context, just Uraraka wants to be a hero for the money, it sounds like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of iffy. It's kind of like, really? All right. But if you get the context, it's for her parents. She grew up poor. She wants to see her parents have a good life. Then it becomes the whole, oh, well, she's such a caring person and kind person. And, like, personally, if I was in the My Hero Academia universe and, like, heroes were a thing and, like, they get paid, good. Heroes need to eat too, right? And so what? Someone wants to be rich. What is so bad with someone wanting a stable life income, right? You cannot tell me that you guys wouldn't, like, if somebody came up to you and it's like, hey, press this button and you'll be rich. Do not tell me you would not press that button. Because you would. You would. It's everybody's ambition to at least, you know, become rich or at least become financially stable, right? So, okay, I got on a whole tangent. My bad. I went on a whole tangent there. On to the next POV, which is Todoroki's POV, and it's just like, that one, a couple more tears kind of went down, but it wasn't the whole waterworks yet. Not yet. Not till we get to Izuku's point of view. Oh my god. Well, as I said yesterday, I did get my answer. I do know what was in there, and it was, oh god. I'm starting to cry. Because I can only imagine how that feels for Izuku. Because, think about it. This is someone who has lost a close friend of his and actually saw, like, a huge murder spree, you know, like, just all those people dead, who lived in a world where if anybody knew that he had a quirk, that he would get killed, right? It's he would be killed. And to know that, you know, it's like, are you gonna leave me too? And then to wake up, completely new area, everything he's ever known, all the friends he's ever known are gone, right? 200 years gone, right? And the only one he does know is his older brother, who turned out to become a horrible villain. When, you know, when he first knew him and grew up with him, it was a person who wanted to help people, and now he finds out that his brother, the one thing he knows about, is this awful villain who's been doing the opposite. And then you find people, and people are supporting you, and then you get that bombshell where it's like, oh, they're leaving me. Izuku is very in a state of mind that it's not stable. And it's why I believe, as much as he makes the whole joke of like, I'm older than you, kind of like, no, mentally speaking, he's still 15. And a 15-year-old not having a stable mental health it's obviously something that's super common nowadays, but like, for him specifically, he is barely getting his footing again. And it's not just like, oh, something happened, no. He was asleep for 2 100 years. He was in the frozen thingy and came back, and everything's changed. Technology, everything he has to know. Now it's the complete opposite. If you have a quirk, you have a powerful quirk, that's amazing. People support you. If you don't have a quirk, well then too bad. Like, we don't support you. You're worthless kind of thing. It's a complete flip, and having to reground yourself. And then finding out that the person who you thought you could trust, the person you thought you could count on, doesn't want you? Obviously, I don't think Toshinori meant it that way. I think he was honestly getting an apartment for the both of them, like maybe a bigger apartment for like Izuku to have his own room kind of thing. But obviously, Izuku at that moment didn't like, you know, picture that, right? He jumped to conclusions. And then you get a call from your older brother being like, I don't believe that you're Izuku. And Izuku's like, okay, well, that's it. My last straw. And, you know, the last straw that broke the camel's back. And obviously, he cracked. And it was a very hard moment to voice line and sit here and record and read. Because I tried to do his voice where he was angry and also upset, because he's not just sad, right? He's upset, he's angry, but he's also afraid and terrified. At least I feel that I'm interpreting in that moment. Author, if you're listening to this, please tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, right? Or whatever. Like, you give me a thumbs up if I'm right, and a thumbs down if I'm completely wrong. But yeah, enough of this long tangent. That was my last note. As always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Join our community Discord server, link is in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.